if we want to combat like the lighting pollution, everything it's not only from the concept, and it can also like happen a bit after. And even if like the project is done, we can still improve.
Yes.
I think it's quite important when we are like commissioning a project to not just only stick with the concept, but sometimes always to re-question and check if we can improve always a little bit. Otherwise, if we just like satisfied with like something very standard, because this is like long project, right? Like I believe like the concept of this Telecom Bank Tower has been done 4 years ago.
So, I see. Okay.
Yeah, the context was very different. It was before COVID, before like the energy now, like the demand of energy is very different now in Vietnam than it was like 4 years ago. It's different context, and we try to guess what will happen like in the future.
Welcome back to the Virtual Lighting Design Community Podcast, the go-to resource for all things lighting design. In today's episode, we have a special interview with Fanny Soulard, a senior lighting designer at Aurecon. Many of you may remember Fanny as one of the keynote speakers at the recent Guangzhou International Lighting Exhibition in China. That was back in June 2023. Her presentation on light pollution captivated the audience, and we are thrilled to have the opportunity to sit down with Fanny for a one-on-one conversation. During our discussion, Fanny will share her insights, experiences, and expertise, and will explore her approaches to sustainable lighting solutions and the challenges she faces as a senior lighting designer at Aurecon. For those interested, we have a visual version of this interview available on our YouTube channel. Simply search for the Virtual Lighting Design Community and subscribe to stay updated with the latest video content. Also, don't forget to visit our online community platform at www.vld.community, where you can access an abundance of high-quality content and connect with fellow lighting professionals and enthusiasts. So join the conversation, expand your knowledge, and be part of our thriving community. Before we dive into this interview, let's take a moment to acknowledge our premium supporters who make this podcast possible. A big thank you to Aerolight, Creative Lighting Asia, Aurecon, and the Signified Lighting Academy for their continued support. So if you're passionate about lighting design and eager to learn from industry experts like Fanny, this episode is a must listen, so get ready to be inspired and discover new perspectives in the world of lighting design. Enjoy!
My name is Martin Klaassen, and welcome to the Virtual Light Design Community. I'm here in Guangzhou. We had an event this morning called East Meets West, where we discussed the topic of light and health and well-being. My guest is one of the speakers, Fanny Soulard. Welcome. Please tell my audience, who are you and what do you do in your daily life?
Yeah, so my name is Fanny. I'm a French native lighting designer. I have applied art background. I've been exploring like the lighting design in a different, like in a very transversal way, because I started with working with architects, but also with some manufacturers. I have like get some different experience with like some lighting studio in France, in Australia, in Vietnam, and I just know setting up with like an engineering company. So I think this is like describing best like my expertise. It's trying just to gather like very different inspiration, meeting like people with different culture, different expertise, and trying just to catch the best from all of them.
But that's nice because it gives you an insight in how people think from their perspective, right?
And also just to understand like all the process, because I know that sometimes lighting designers, they think that, manufacturers, they think only about business, which is not completely true from my expertise and my experience at least. Like there are a lot of people, I mean, there are talent everywhere and there is inspiration everywhere. And I think the more we can understand the different perspective, the more like our design is holistic and it can like definitely be addressed better depending on the situation. So I'm not thinking that, I mean, I'm still improving and discovering, but also I think I'm maybe like quite a curious person, so I really love to challenge myself.
You have to be curious in our business.
Definitely.
If you're not, then...
But yeah, I really love this challenge to arrive in a new environment, and people are giving me some like guidance, and I'm just like, oh, okay, so I'm a senior now, I'm not a junior, so I have like this luggage with me and how I can connect properly. And this is all a question of exchange, you know. I'm not trying to convince the people, I'm just trying to find a compromise and welcoming like all their knowledge and trying to find like how I can compromise. And I really love like all this like cultural like exchange.
But you're in an interesting situation because on one hand, you have experienced different stakeholders, whether they're manufacturers or architects or things like that. But at the same time, because you have a European background, you know, you've been in Australia, I believe, and you've been now in Vietnam, you also have a lot of cultural inputs. And I think I had traveled also a lot throughout the world, and I find those cultural inputs also really important in how you approach lighting. Do you have that as well?
Yes, I think I learn a lot about myself by being like facing like a different culture. And I think in Vietnam that was when I get a lot of like self-introspection, re-questioning my methodology and re-questioning a bit my identity. And I believe that I will still be like a French person like all my life long. So this is defining my identity. So I believe I still have like something linked with this in the way I'm approaching a design, and it's not worth it just to trying to remove it. But yeah, capturing like different culture can really help just like having like a different perception, but maybe to be a bit more innovative in the term that I can be influenced by someone like having a specific approach and someone having like a different methodology.
Have you been to the Guangzhou Lighting Fair before, or is this the first time?
Not yet. First time.
So this is the first time. So what's your? But I believe you have been to Frankfurt, or
Yes.
So, what's your first impression walking around here?
Well, it was a bit of nostalgia, to be honest, because so when I moved in Vietnam, it was completely during the COVID, like the pandemic time. So in Vietnam, we don't have the opportunity to have like this kind of event.
Right. Yeah.
And at one time, I was really feeling like the remotely situation a bit sadly because, you need just to go like in contact with the people.
Yeah.
Just to test a different sample, and I was really missing that. I feel that in Europe we have so many opportunities just to go in factories, to be like people are coming to you and they give you like
there's
the
a lot of
samples.
factories in China as well.
I know. But yeah, because of the pandemic, I think both of the countries, Vietnam and China, were a bit like locked.
Yeah.
So it's a really good opportunity to be here and have like the way to discover more and to have like a better understanding and get a bit aware of like the novelties, because in Vietnam we are a lot dependent of suppliers. So it's never easy because it's like a manufacturer sending the information to a supplier, which is sending you the information. So it's not really, like the really original information.
Yeah.
So, so I'm really happy to be here. And yes, a bit of nostalgia because many different marketing things close with light and building.
Now, you're here to participate in our event as a speaker. Tell us a little bit about the topic that you had, about light pollution and all that. And is there any big takeaway from listening to everybody else that you thought, that really stood out for you?
So my topic was about lighting pollution, and I was focusing on one building in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I've been involved like in a very late stage, and to be very honest, like at the beginning I was a bit hesitant just to present it because it's maybe not the best portfolio.
No, I think you were quite courageous to actually show the challenges, and a lot of people tend to present all the beautiful things about a project, but you were courageous enough to also show all the problems and the challenges that you had to overcome to actually realize what you managed to realize in the end.
And I think it's really good also to understand that sometimes we have a false idea about a notion. And I know that I think you guide me a bit when we were preparing these conferences, and you guide me very well in the way just to pick the topic. Because you can display something very generic. But when it's not a specific example, people sometimes they can't really project
And I'm sure a lot of people could feel the same thing, this has happened to me too.
Yes, and so we get like a lot of like internal discussion about this project because I get the unfair like feeling that to have been like pushed and meet like the client which was not happy, and I was just like, okay, what? It's not my fault. I haven't produced this. But then it's a really good opportunity to have an internal discussion and just to mix like, okay, I believe like my analysis is this. But my colleague, they told me like, okay, we have done this because of this context. And it's very important to understand why people end up doing that. It's not only their decision. And that's like the influence and the impact on all the environment and also the fact that we are different consultants and we can't, as lighting designer, we can't mastering everything. And sometimes we're not.
We're a part of the chain of events.
And our discipline, it's not always like put in priority, right?
No.
In a building.
Often no.
But yeah, so it was interesting to get this internal like talk, and I think we have take like some very good conclusion and learn some lesson. So yeah, and even for myself, I was just like, okay, I know that it's just a challenge, and it's always interesting to have a challenge and just to prove that you can always improve. Like if we want to combat like the lighting pollution, everything it's not only from the concept, and it can also like happen a bit after, and even if like the project is done, we can still improve.
Yes.
And I think it's quite important when we are like commissioning a project to not just only stick with the concept, but sometimes always to re-question and check if we can improve always a little bit. Otherwise, if we just like satisfy with like something very standard, because this is like long project, right? Like I believe like the concept of this Tecom Bank Tower has been done 4 years ago.
So, I see. Okay.
Yeah, the context was very different. It was before COVID, before like the energy now, like the demand of energy is very different now in Vietnam than it was like 4 years ago because of the climate environment has changed. Because also like people get a bit more access to some equipment and all that stuff. So I can understand that it's different context, and we try to guess what will happen like in the future. It's not always easy, but yeah, I mean, that's the reason why.
Thank you for sharing your experience, because I think that was really interesting, and a lot of people may identify with similar problems. So sharing that was really nice. Thank you for that. Now, I'm here on behalf of the virtual light design community, a fairly young community, born out of the pandemic. But since we're young and we're trying to grow and try to serve our community, it's always good to get some feedback from people like yourself who are now also contributing. What are your feelings? How can we further improve the community? How do you feel we're doing so far?
So personally, like living in Vietnam, our industry is very small and we don't have access so much in like research and conferences. So I really appreciate like all this online community, because it's a real chance just to get connection with people I won't be able to meet physically. Yeah. So I get like aware about the VLDC, I think, through like the Women in Lighting platform, because everything is well connected.
Yeah, Martin and Sharon are part of our founders, so yeah, absolutely.
So I knew about this like a few years ago, and I was a bit lazy maybe, and it's so many different platforms, but yeah, I think the context is very interesting. I went there a few weeks ago just to have a look, and I found like a presentation from someone living in Lebanon and facing like some issues with like energy cut and all that stuff, which is providing an echo with what's happening now in Vietnam. And I think it's something, there's so many to learn from this situation for our future, because our future will be so challenging, right? Like, it's not being paranoid or sustainability like anxious, to know that we will have issue with like, the energy in the future. So yeah, that was for me. It's like this kind of people like testimonializing like this situation through this platform. It's like very, very precious information, and not all the platform have like the opportunity to giving the opportunity to people just to raise their voice this way.
You can comment, you can contribute, you can post, you can share. and find topics that may be of interest or that have similar, issues that you are facing as well. So I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
Independently of the time zone also, because I know
at your own leisure. It's at your own convenience. Absolutely. Yeah. Now I'm glad to hear. That's a very nice feedback for us to know, because we're doing things and then we are hoping that we're going in the right direction. So that's why I'm asking the question also.
Very inspiring platform.
Yeah, thank you for that. Now, a few personal questions. I love to ask the question, what drives somebody out of bed? What drives Fanny out of bed every morning to do what you're doing? Passion or whatever it is.
Personally, I'm really involved inside my job. I love my job, and I love also just to discover culture and all that stuff. And thanks to my job, I've been able to live in different countries. I always been set up in a country because my job was there. And for me, it's like a really good opportunity. I feel lucky, but I feel also like I have like a social responsibility just to do my best, to use like my job as something which can be like positive in the area where I'm working, right? Through my project. And I think like lighting is so powerful, and we have so many, I don't know, it's just a magic like medium.
Right.
So I spent many times, and I'm really happy just to wake up in the morning and to think like, okay, I have this job.
What am I going to do today?
I'm not doing only like interesting projects, sometimes it's a bit, I'm working for an engineering company, so sometimes you have like very technical, great projects. So this is maybe not like my first motivation, but I feel very exciting with like the social part of the lighting. I feel very exciting with like the technical knowledge, speaking with like a scientist, it's magic. So it's a bit maybe like...
Well, talking about magic, if you had a magic wand, what could you, or what would you like to change? We always have these little things, or maybe more ideological things that we think, if I could change this, or if I could do this, I would love to do that.
Maybe to reset a bit, like... reset.
Reset, okay.
Some like stories we have like link with the lighting. So what that means is, for example, we have seen like, for example, through one of the speaker, Jinky, presentation that, for example, in Philippines, they were like linking modernity with light.
Yes.
Which is very like linked with our history of lighting, right? Which has emerged during like the industrial revolution. Which is good, but it's so inside us. Like I have this heritage is so deep, and now that we need to reduce like a bit our consumption, our brightness, we need to fight against that, and it takes a lot of time. We maybe don't have all this time just to change a bit this perception and bring a different desire. So yes, if we could reset a bit, say okay, something neutral. You don't have like any specific feeling, and I will have to bring you like just to create like a new desire together. That will.
It sounds like something you can actually do.
Yeah, but
you don't need a magic wand for that, no?
We need.
I mean, you can certainly apply
creative.
it in your work, I guess. Step back a little bit and.
I think like these habits, they are so deep inside us that. My perception is like it takes time because you can invite like. You can convince like one person, which maybe it's a bit more like dreamer, like between like other clients, but otherwise there are many people who are still stick to the standard, like a bit afraid. Like there are definitely something, like for example, for the project I'm following in Australia, so many projects, especially for like the rail projects, they want to like a really high like luminous level. And if I'm compared with like what I've done in France for like the train project, it's the difference, the gap is like 10 times in Australia. We just try like with my colleague to say that it's a bit too ambitious. Like there are no reason just to provide this luminous level. Technically, it's definitely not like consistent. And the only argumentation which is bringing on the table is, but safety. And for me, I'm just like, but Australia is so safe. I mean, we can see factually that
you could say that,
the crime, it's definitely not high. So it's something in the brain, like something which is deep.
It's more psychological,
Maybe like because there are a lot of, this country has been built up with a lot of people who are migrate and were coming maybe in a situation a bit difficult. maybe they just bring like their fear with them.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult to fight against this fear and to say like, follow me, like just in something a bit more like reasonable. But they're very like, they're a bit like scared, and it's not easy for them just to give you like the trust. And
but it sort of brings me to my last question. You talk about fear and all that. Scary things are happening. We're entering the smart world right now with, smart lighting systems, with artificial intelligence, with ChatGPT, maybe even the metaverse. Who knows what's going to happen in the next couple of years? Question to you is, A, have you already been confronted with that? And B, how do you look at it? Is it going to affect you in the way you're going to approach your work in the future?
so I have a dual feeling with this.
Right, I can imagine, yeah.
So my first feeling, it's like, I have the feeling like all this technology can put like a bit too much like distance between like the people, and so we're losing like we're social animal, right? So if we're not socializing and having like a direct physical and direct contact with like our environments, I believe we're losing a lot about our culture and a lot of perception. But at the same time, if it's well used and controlled like properly, it could be like a really good complement, something like which is combining with the light very well. Like I do remember, for example, one of my colleagues in Concepto did like a really good project, which is mixing like real installation with augmented reality.
All right.
And so they have developed like an application. It was for a touristic purpose in the city of Rennes. And that was a very good compromise because the city didn't get the budget just to install everything. It's like an heritage like area. So a lot of like cabling, like constraints, and actually they just install like the minimal and they get like the augmented reality just as a combination. And I think many like young generation, they're so good in like mastering and entering with that. So everyone is satisfied. Yeah. And I think like in this kind of connection,
find a balance
it could be very strong. When both, like when we succeed just to create like this connection and this combination. But if we rely only like on virtual reality, it's maybe like not so helpful. Like it's losing something like. Sometimes it's out of the soul, It's something like too robotic, too far from like something.
Fanny Soulard, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for your contribution to this event.
Thank you very
much.
Nice
speaking to you. Thank you.
My honor to have been invited. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Virtual Lighting Design Community Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our insightful interview with Fanny Soulard. If you found the episode valuable, we encourage you to consider subscribing to our podcast, leave a review, and share it with your friends and colleagues. By spreading the word, you help us to reach more lighting enthusiasts and build a stronger community. Additionally, for those interested, we have a visual version of the interview available on our YouTube channel by searching the Virtual Lighting Design Community, and subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. And as before, don't forget to visit our online community platform where you can access an abundance of high quality content and connect with fellow lighting professionals and enthusiasts. You can find us at www.vld.community. Once again, thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue to explore the world of lighting design and bring you more inspiring conversations with industry leaders. Until then,